Welcome, everybody. We're going to give everybody just another couple minutes to get in here. Good morning or afternoon, depending where you're coming in from. Sorry. We're not going to start off with an English lesson today.
We're all over.
Yes. And Eric, do you have coffee? Does this qualify? That's it. Eric doesn't talk unless he's got his coffee. It's
That's
coffee
right.
chat or no chat.
That's
Uh,
right.
just like an IV to the arm over here. So,
That's
Right.
it. That's it. By the way, if you guys are not following Eric on LinkedIn or other channels and watching his coffee chats, you're missing out. Be sure and do that because he does some quick hit stuff that's really interesting. I thought your one last week covering the SVS event was amazing. Some of those insights you
Yeah.
pulled out. That was great.
yeah, it's kind of fun where if someone can't attend a certain event, I just realized like, well, here's 8 things that stuck out to me. So let me just like in a minute and 30 seconds, 90 seconds, boom, 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 boom. Yeah,
Yeah.
I like doing that kind of stuff.
I
Yeah.
just
And
told
and
my
Eric is one of our WIN allies, so you should be following him anyway because he's a great supporter of WIN.
Eric, I just told my daughter who's a business student in Arkansas to start following you. She's building up her network now.
Oh, absolutely, Carla. Yeah, I would
Bingo.
love that.
Bingo. All right, we have one more minute here. All right, ready? Go time? Let's do this. All right, through the magic of technology, I'm going to attempt to share my screen. Do not judge me. I can do this, but it's not going to be the smoothest. Let's see if I get this right. Did I do it? Do I have it? Yay. Everybody see that? Awesome.
Did
All
it.
right. Yay, look at me. It's an early morning win. There you go. I'm
There it
feeling
is.
pumped already. There
Literally.
it
Boom.
is. All right. Well, listen, thanks for everybody for dialing in. We've got a nice good group this morning. Appreciate you all taking time or afternoon again. I keep forgetting we're global. So for those of you joining us later in the day, appreciate you as well. We assembled this cast. I cannot tell you how excited I am to be with Eric and Ann and Hannah, just folks that constantly have their finger on the pulse of the industry. And we just thought we'd talk about some things that we've been seeing. As you know, Win hasn't done our own research, so we're not presenting a big research project to you. But as we sit around and talk about very important things and so also very not important things, oh, sorry, I shouldn't have clicked my screen. We start talking about what do we see out in the market and what does that mean? And so what we thought we'd do is just have this time to pull together kind of some of our thoughts and our brain drippings and see where that overlaps to what maybe you guys are seeing, thinking as well. So we spent some time going through research from a lot of different places. Javelin, did some amazing research in these areas. IRF did. A
Hmm.
lot of individual folks have done stuff like Blackhawk and Incom and SVS. There's a lot of good research out in the market. And the interesting thing to us as we kind of looked at all that and said, hey, what are the big trends? Is that we found that what actually happened was, and let's see if I can advance my screen, um, a lot of that coalesced, which is a good thing. It means, nobody's kind of out on their own island screaming a story that nobody else is telling. So the research actually, if you start to look at it all, really comes around. And if you had to put a top list of concerns together, you'd probably come up with about 8 to 10. But four of them just kept showing up over and over and over in one form or another. And so we thought we'd go there and kind of think about those a little bit. And so we did. And what we wanted to do today is kind of break those out and have really a discussion about them. Because again, it's not just us presenting research to you, but we've each kind of taken a section and said, let's talk about that trend or that issue and where it's taking us as an industry. And then very interactively, please stop and interject and raise your hand and let's talk about, is that what you're seeing as well? Because we'll kick it off with some thoughts. But this is an industry trends discussion and would be interesting to see not just if you see that as well, but do you see that and how is it playing out in your world is really the most important thing. And just get some collective thoughts on what these trends and ideas are doing for us or against us, right? We think most of these are really good positives. But sometimes if you're behind a trend, it's a little bit scary. And so we try, obviously to stay ahead of that. And then bonus at the end, we're going to ask you what's missing. These are clearly, like we said, our top four that we pulled out. But just because they're our top four doesn't mean they're also your top four. So be thinking as we go along what else we should add to our list. So with that, I'm going to kick this off to Eric Thiegs. Like I said, Eric is our ally to win, among many other things. He's going to give you a little quick introduction about himself, and he's going to pick up this first section, which unfortunately for Eric, we just decided we're going to throw all the tech things at him. So he gets fraud and AI and security all at one time. And so, Eric, this is your moment. Go.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks, Marina. Hi, everybody. I see a lot of familiar faces and some new ones. So great to have our discussion today. I'm Eric Thiggs. I've been in the industry for over 25 years. It's interesting how, this gift card incentive loyalty space grabbed onto me when I was in my mid-20s and hasn't let me go as I head into my mid-50s. And it's one of those things that I love. I've had experience leading companies and growing companies and selling companies, and I'm currently sitting on the executive team at a gift card aggregator, global gift card aggregator called Neocurrency. And then I do some consulting for the industry. I am an IGCC board member for the Incentive Gift Card Coalition as well, and then an active participant in RGCA, GCVA, IMA, and many of the other WIN acronyms that are out there. So love the industry, been here a long time. And yeah, these ladies threw me into the trenches with, Eric, why don't you talk about AI, fraud, and security tech in 8 minutes on the WIN, industry market watch trends conversation. So you guys, as many of you know, that these could each be their own conversations. So what I thought I would do is I came prepared with a few highlights, and that's why I titled this slide "What's on My Radar," because I want to give, if you're interested, I'll call it homework, like a couple things that have literally popped up on my radar in the last few weeks or a month. Because if you asked me, hey, Eric, what's on your radar for these 3 topics next month, I can guarantee it would probably be different. So this is like a moment in time right now, and have your pens ready because I think there's some cool stuff happening that I want to point you to. And whether you go there or not, it's up to you. But so let's start with AI. Everyone wants to talk about it. I'm sure many of us are using ChatGPT or Google AI or Claude or something for our own kind of personal or workplace, kind of productivity. For the industry, on the consumer, like agentic commerce side of things, here's homework item number 1. If you did not see the Global Payments, aka former WorldPay, agentic commerce report, look that up. So essentially Global Payments came out and said, we've got our eye on agentic commerce. Here's what this means for payments, gift cards and incentives, obviously being kind of a tangential Venn diagram over payments. So that one is interesting. And the one stat that I want to share from a consumer standpoint is 31% of consumers right now are actually ready, quote unquote, according to the study, ready for agentic AI-led buying, meaning they are comfortable with letting the AI agent make the purchase and not themselves. And I thought that was kind of like 31%, that seems high. The other kind of sub homework on this is if you're familiar with Michelle Bayo, she's a payments guru. She's been in the space a long time. She just did a thought leadership article on this Global Payments WorldPay agentic commerce report. So if you're like, Eric, I don't want to read a statistical report from Global Payments, read Michelle Bayo's article on the report because she kind of breaks it down and gives a few more insights from her kind of payments lens and her guru-ness on the payment side of things. And if you don't know how to spell her name, I was just thinking that Beyo. So it's Michelle Bayo, Beyo. Tell her Eric sent you. Known her for a long time, but she's on LinkedIn. She just wrote a book on innovation and payments. So I feel like I'm her PR manager right now. I'm not. It's so funny that this report came out and then I saw her LinkedIn post and I was like, oh, And full disclosure, I have not had a chance to read Michelle's article yet, so I need to do that too. So it's on my homework. So those two things, I think, just to kind of, if you haven't experienced or read much about agentic commerce and how it's kind of touching the payments gift card space, I'll point you there. But here's, if you want to see it in action. So Hannah, Dr. Hannah, on our panel, had me speak on a panel in London last month at the GCVA conference, and the topic was agentic commerce. And it's interesting, at that time, a month ago, I saw a pilot of a B2C gift card mall, led by agentic commerce experience. So the consumer would go to this gift card mall via their mobile device or their iPad, and they would essentially have like a conversation with an AI agent to check out. And then they would check out using their Apple Pay. So it'd be a bio read of your face. You don't actually use your credit card. You have to check out with your Google Pay or Apple Pay. And it was fascinating from like a gift card checkout experience. The company, and I couldn't name them then, going back to how fast these things change, the company just launched their public-facing app in the Apple Store and in Google Play. They're called Blink Sky. So that's all one word, Blink
Oh, yeah.
Sky. So if you want to play around and you actually want to see an agentic gift card-led commerce experience, pull out your iPad. I think you have to do it on an iPad. I don't know if the mobile device or the Apple OS takes it yet, but you can download the Blink Sky gift card mobile app, buy your own gift card, buy your favorite gift card, make a gift purchase, and you'll see the AI agent. It talks in 60 languages. You can tell it to say, you can give it, ask it for recommendations. Like, I want to buy a gift card for my nephew, and he's into sports, golf, and fine dining. And literally the page will move around and it'll give you all the cards in the catalog. You don't have to do any clicking or looking at categories. It'll pull up the cards and you can say, well, no, I don't want that. Give me a Starbucks card, load it for $10 and check out. And then it'll pull up please you show your face and check out using your mobile app, Apple Pay. So that would be my other thing and again, I'm not the PR agency for Blink Sky. I'm referencing it because it was fascinating, and they were the first ones that I saw, I would say, using a true agentic AI agent from a consumer standpoint to check out and have that experience. It was pretty interesting. So those are two things on my radar if you're looking for, kind of what's happening on that front. The second part of AI, though, is for B2B. And here's something fascinating and from personal experience. So I'm in the B2B side. I'm not so much on the B2C side. I have some clients and whatnot that do B2C work or B2B2C distribution of gift cards and incentives. On the B2B side, I came across my first contract, my first MSA, Master Services Agreement, where there was an AI clause contractually in the MSA that said, you will not use AI-powered tools for the fulfillment and delivery and sourcing of our gift cards without our permission. And I thought that was fascinating because in my 25 plus years of working on contracts and being on the aggregator end of the distribution of a brand's gift card through various B2B loyalty and employee rewards, types of channels and use cases, I had never come across a contractual clause that legally said, you better not use AI unless you ask us first. And the reason is, and you can think about it, well, and by the way, you don't do a show of hands. Some of you have seen my presentations at the IMA Summit or at the GCVA where I do the B2B, gift card industry primer. And I talk about the layers of sourcing where you have the brand, call it Uber, and then you have their processor, TDS, and then you have the aggregators that then distribute the TDS issued gift card for Uber down to their platform buyers. And then those platform buyers have direct buyers or clients. And those could be anything from like an airline to a bank to a healthcare company. And those are like the affinity actual organizations that have the end users attached to those programs. This AI contractual language essentially is protecting those downstream direct buyers and clients who are using that platform, who are buying from an aggregator, who want that Uber card. But what happens if sensitive PII data for that end user is somehow exposed, through that process of the mechanics of supporting that program if there's an AI, capability? Because guess what? We all trust when machines are told to do something and they don't think, but can we trust as humans a thinking machine that has access to PII data of my end users via my customers? That becomes a big ball of twine that some of those platform buyers are like, AI is powerful and we see the future, but until I understand what it's going to do in your platform, you will not use it. So I thought that was interesting. I feel like I'm shouting
That's
at you.
really interesting because that's not the angle
Maybe
that I would
I'm
have
going to
guessed
pause.
at all. That
Yeah.
that the concern. You're right. The machine doesn't. It knows what PII is, but it's not as worried about it as we all are, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
some people rotate heavily there, especially when you get into healthy benefits, right? It's a
Then
Yeah.
you're talking
nightmare
about
to think
HIPAA.
about what you could
Oh,
expose.
exactly. And again, AI tools are going to make everything so much more efficient and quicker, and you don't have to. But when you have machine logic that does A to B and it's binary, it's ones and zeros, and it's a gift card API that only understands, the calls and requests. It's not doing any additional processing or thinking.
Mhm.
That changes when you're introducing AI powered tools in behind the scenes on a B2B kind of provider ecosystem. So um, just again, something that has literally come up on my radar in the last, few weeks when I read this contract, and I'm like, this is fascinating. And yeah, definitely a trend. I would expect to see more. The other interesting thing about this, you guys, is I say, guys, I'm the only guy here. I hope we all know. I'm sorry that this, as a
It's the air
ally,
quotes,
my
guys.
everybody, my 21-year-old daughter and my 17-year-old daughter would crucify me if they heard me using those. So hey, everybody, I need to be more, I need to be a better ally about that. So, oh God, the reactions.
We're all
I
offended.
know.
I think there are worse
Yeah.
guys we could be called.
Yes.
Lori,
Right on,
totally.
Lori.
Yeah, and me too. Um, so if we're used, so that's on the B2B side. Interesting. I'll throw this out there as a little side note. It wasn't until like the second red line that they introduced this language. So the very first version of the MSA that I saw, it was their boilerplate that they use for all parties. And it was after we've gotten into a couple turns on it that their legal came back and like, hey, Eric, we need to insert this new language. So it's actually evolving in real time, even as these business leaders are deciding what to do. And essentially, they were like, we're going to put it in that we got to get a permission clause in there. However, so speaking of on the fraud side, so I'm going to transition into fraud. So on the beneficial side of AI power, I just came off of, and Marina, thanks for the plug. I was at the SVS Exchange Conference last week. SVS, the global gift card processor and platform, and they do first party through their Biatab acquisition and things there. They were talking from an innovation standpoint, which I thought was, fascinating and it makes sense. The ability on fraud monitoring to be AI powered, because if you can have the ability for your system to learn on the trends that it's seen, or here comes a lot of inputs, especially on first party platforms where the merchant has their gift card and consumers can go in and buy. And if the platform is simply ones and zeros and just accepting orders, you can get scammers and bad actors and, bots to do all kinds of buying behavior that wouldn't get picked up on just a general kind of, here's the code of how selling this gift card works on this e-commerce site. You add an AI agent layer in there that starts to look for, well, this behavior doesn't match the normal flow. Let's put this over here before we approve that transaction. There's stuff that's happening at the processors like SVS where they are using AI-powered fraud monitoring to protect their brands, protect their customers, and that's not just happening with them. That's happening in a lot of places, and I think that's extremely powerful. You can, if you're a buyer in the system, you could ask about if your providers are using AI on the fraud side or not for screenings. Some are and some aren't yet, but that's something to keep an eye on. And then the next one on the power of reward links. It's interesting. This topic, if you're not familiar with what a reward link is, back in the day, when I was in my 30s and 40s, we would send out raw code and pin. Like when a consumer redeemed their points or their loyalty currency for a gift card, and they would get that gift card, whether it's physical or digital. But on the digital side, we would send out a raw code and pin, meaning in that email, you could see the 16-digit gift card number, you could see the 4-digit pin right there. what most of, if not all of the aggregators and large providers in the spaces are doing is they are now wrapping that raw code and pin in a secure URL wrapper. And essentially what that does is that it allows the provider, the brands, everyone else to now mask the 16-digit code and pin and activate that code when the consumer is actually ready. So it's not just sitting out there in the ether or in an email inbox, waiting for bad actor to come across it and expose it. The other part about the power of reward links is that because it's a link and it's a URL, the providers, in particular the aggregators, can now see IP tracking. They can see where the end recipient is. This is great for like fraud and security chase downs. Like, oh, we saw a bunch of links redeemed in XYZ city, USA. That might be where one of those, gift card rings, bad actor rings are. We can notify law enforcement, and it's down to the city and IP address. You can also turn off links if there's an exposed batch of links that a buyer had purchased or sent through their API down to end users. With a click of a button with a keystroke, you can literally deactivate all those links. You can re-enable them, cancel them, refund them. Going back to the end of the day, if you send out raw code and pin, that value is what we call in the wild. Meaning if you want to retract these, gift cards that were sent out accidentally or exposed by a bad actor, you would literally have to call the brand. You'd have to get involved with their processor. You'd have to send them a spreadsheet of those links and pins, or excuse me, the card numbers and pins. And you'd have to there's a lag time of trying to then devalue those because you got to get other parties involved that the bad actors 10 out of 10 times nowadays have already devalued and used up the value. But with reward links, you can turn it all off. Reward links are not new. So I share that. So this is not something that's on my radar this month. I mean, they've been around for half a decade. I'm going to speak in depth on it. If anyone's going to the Best Buy RGCA forum in Minneapolis in June, I'm going to be one of the presenters, particularly just on reward links. And I'm going to walk through, again, kind of like I did at a high level here, but how they work, the benefits and things there. So definitely keep an eye on that because that is technology that is fairly common now and in common use that does help prevent fraud and gives all parties, a lot of flexibility in how they work with the distribution of rewards. Let me pause it. What's my time check, everyone? Because
You're over, dude.
Okay, so
That's
so you know
okay.
what? No, Marina, this is good. I had a feeling because I can get on a roll.
No, this is good. This is good.
Come back to me if we have time on security and tech. I do want to make sure the rest of the panel have a chance to get through their material. So
Yeah,
let's
and I
just put a
do,
pin in that.
is tomorrow maybe, or is somebody monitoring chat? I can't see chat from here, but, or if anybody has a question, blast it out here for Eric, because
Jackie had one. She had a question, but Carla's, thankfully, thank you, Carla, for answering. She wanted to find out what the AI app you mentioned was called, but Carla said Blinky Sky. Is that right? Blink Sky?
Blink
Perfect.
Sky.
Hi.
Yep.
great.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I'm just going to go on pause then, Marina, and we'll keep the show rolling.
Yeah, but I would just open it up. Any other comments or thoughts around fraud AI that anyone else wants to throw in or bring up before we go forward?
The contract is a whole nother call I think we could have.
Wow,
The
that's
carving
really awesome.
out.
I mean, it's pretty
Dang.
interesting, you guys. Yeah, and happy to. And if anyone, again, going back to LinkedIn, if you guys do have other questions, feel free to you can message me on the side. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so let's transition over to a discussion about self-use. So Dr. Hannah is going to pull this one forward for us, and we start off by making our cards secure, right? So we get them into people's hands securely, but now the question becomes, what are they doing with them, right? Because if we're going to create incentives that make sense and that are powerful, we have to understand how they're being used. So this is kind of teasing out that next level. And Dr. Hannah, you want to take this away and let me know how to advance your slides, but this is some really good research. And also want to point out to everybody that Hannah is coming to us from the UK, and so bringing some more of that global perspective to us. Obviously, Anne, Eric, and I are hyper focused on US, but appreciate this additional insight for us.
Thanks, Marina. And yeah, thanks for Wynn for asking me to join you today. So as I was introduced. So I'm Hannah. I run the Gift Card and Voucher Association. We're the trade association, not-for-profit membership organisation in the UK. Represent lots of UK retailers, issuers, service providers, but have lots of global members as well across the EU and as far as the US when they have a global footprint. So we have a really interesting mix of members, and we're very lucky that our retailers and issuers submit their data, their sales data to us twice a year, which gives us really interesting oversight into, as a kind of realistic representation of the sector as possible. Obviously, there are retailers and issuers who are not on membership or don't submit data. But what we've seen in the UK over the last couple of years is just a massive, massive growth in the B2B space in gift cards, or what I like to think of as B2B2C, because obviously in the end, the gift cards end up in the hand of the consumer. So there's still very much a consumer angle to this. The brand is still relevant to the consumer, the experience about the consumer, but essentially they're first being sold in the B2B space. Much of what Eric has spoken about in a number of different events, that kind of, I would say, being new to the sector, the complicated landscape of understanding how gift cards move. But here in the UK, we've seen that it's the largest segment. So H2 2025, so that was the last 6 months of 2025, 52% of total sales, so more than half the sales were in the B2B submarket. And this at the moment, this is how we break it down, and I think we could potentially improve this, but you've got acquisition, you've got insurance replacement, charities and grant giving. I think those probably are self-explanatory. But then the other big mix in this B2B space is rewards and incentives, and I know all of you will be very familiar with that. So again, what that's used for. And then there's benefits, employee savings, and salary sacrifice. So in the UK, I don't know how it works in other countries. You can essentially sometimes sacrifice an element of your salary before tax in exchange for, gift cards. Maybe that's to buy a bicycle, maybe that's to buy tech, those type of things. Employee benefits platforms. So that's around where you might get a gift from an employer, but it might also be you can buy discounted gift cards and, I need to buy some new carpets and I'm going to go and buy, a gift card to a carpet shop before I go buy it. But, maybe that gift card's actually only in your hand for 48 hours, 24 hours before you actually go and spend it right away. And then the one thing that's not mentioned on here, and I think it probably falls under the 60% in our data, is a kind of consumer platforms for savings. So I was at the Payments Association conference recently with Tillo and my colleagues from Tesco and from an app called Cheddar. This is actually where consumers themselves go on to find savings. So rather than going through their kind of employee savings platform, and perhaps we have this in other parts of the world, they go on, they join Cheddar, or there's something called Sprive here in the UK, and essentially you join with the interest in saving some of that cash back that you get on the discounted gift card to yourself. So again, same action as going on an employee benefits platform, but maybe you've joined Sprive because you want to pay a little bit overpayment on your mortgage. So you're buying your supermarket gift cards through the app and you're getting a bit of a discount, but some of that discount is, or the discount, or I'm not exactly sure how it works, but some amount of that money, maybe a discount, some of it is a cash back that goes to overpaying on your mortgage. So a real kind of consumer facing B2B. And I think what we've seen in the UK, and I know I was also at the SVS Exchange last week and other conferences in the US, similar discussions of the cost of living crisis. Everything is more expensive. Everyone is thinking more about their budgets. And as we've seen this continue, and I think the new current wars, multiple wars, continuing to impact prices, continuing to impact what the consumers seeing and feeling is driving them to look for these cost saving opportunities. And I mean, B2B gift cards fall right into that in such an exciting way. So that's the kind of mechanism of it. And then if you go to the next slide, please, Marina. So we also do a lot of consumer research. So this is really interesting. And you see that in H1 2025, so the first half of the year, we've got 16% of UK consumers bought a gift card for themselves. I think that's quite a large number of people who are doing this. It's not obviously 50% of the population, but if you think about overall gift card purchases, this is actually a significant amount of them. They like them because they offer value and flexibility. They motivate purchases. Oh, maybe I shouldn't buy that right now. Oh, I've got a bit of a discount if I buy it through this platform. I buy it through my employee savings, my employee benefits platform. Maybe it's an incentive, loyalty. If I've got this, I can exchange this for something. And really it's all about value. And I think that I have some of my UK colleagues here on the call as well. We're seeing this understanding and knowledge of gift cards as not just a gift, but as a payment mechanism. it's another way to pay. And I think that's becoming more and more accepted with our colleagues in the payments industry, in the retail industry. I think this is becoming kind of a normalization. And it is thanks to many fintechs and many B2B, those in the B2B space, that it's not just a present, it is a real opportunity to save money, and it still has the same benefits, and this is what we've seen in our research, the same benefits as a gift for a gift card. There's potentially new brand acquisition, brand recognition, potential to work on in the loyalty space, to over the lifetime. We had some interesting discussions about whether this was useful in the lifetime of a consumer to a specific brand, that even if their first visit is with a discounted gift card, the lifetime of their kind of spend with that brand is actually greater than even if they first come in through a kind of discounted way. Their baskets are bigger. We talk a lot about uplift. There's a lot of positives for the industry out of this. But that's my quick run through of kind of a little bit of data about what we're seeing in B2B. I know it's rising in the US. I think B2C is still a bigger proportion of the market in the US, whereas we've kind of flipped the other way. But it's growing, and I think it's interesting to see what we'll do in the industry and what those outside of our industry end up doing with these as an opportunity.
Yeah, and Hannah, I think bringing all of that, especially very specifically to incentives, if we think about, consumers are really trying to make things work, right? And gift cards are such a big piece of that. And if I'm an employer trying to provide incentives, how do I provide incentives that let employees do the things they need to do, right? You mentioned, by playing the game right, game in air quotes, right? I can actually pay down my mortgage because I can free up dollars to do that, right?
Yeah.
If
And
I
I
can
think
help people do certain things, that they turn around and do other very beneficial things with them. So even incentive is like, oh, I just want to make my employees happy. Yeah, but the way your employee was happy was because they got to pay down their mortgage. That was a big deal to them, right? Or get that bike they need to bike to work, right?
and we, to your point, when it's absolutely spot on, we did some research because we are advocating in the UK around changing our kind of tax-free benefits for employers to be able to use for employees. We did a lot of research around how happy employees are when they receive, whether it's gift cards or other incentives. It isn't just nothing, and it doesn't need to be hundreds of dollars of pounds. Having that recognition through an incentive, £50 gift card, does really go a long way towards productivity, towards employee happiness, positive feedback from employees toward their employer, and it would be the same right towards brands. So gift cards bring this real joy, and we, from a kind of sector perspective and an argument to policymakers' perspective, the nice thing about gift cards that when that money is in the gift card, it isn't in cash, and maybe the opposite point of paying off the mortgage, it isn't going to pay the electricity bill, that isn't necessarily going to pay debt. It is staying within the economy. It is being spent back in shops. It is supporting what we could call in the UK, the high street. It's supporting retailers. That money keeps moving within the economy. So when we're making that kind of point to employers, or we're making that to wider policymakers, there's a real exciting element of that B2B space that is doing something for the economy.
Yeah.
Hey, Hannah and Marina, I think I couldn't agree more with the whole idea of like gift cards aren't just gift cards. It's like they're a way to pay, like you were saying. And I see one of the Win co-founders, Holly Galati, on the call. And, when you launched Flourish, which was like one of the first trade show conferences organizations that went under the banner of branded currency. I remember when you were talking about that and changing the conversation on how all of us in the industry, it's like, it's not a gift card, it's branded currency. It's how you pay for things, goods and services at the brands you love. And yes, you can give a gift card as a gift, but it had really kind of evolved, I feel like, Hannah, like you were just talking about, into this branded currency experience that a lot of consumers have embraced.
I mean, I think right now we're even at a very interesting inflection point, especially in the US, with the adoption of things like stablecoin at a national level and then getting a lot of legitimacy. I think it changes the conversation around how money moves and what does it mean to be. I mean, there'll be lots of legal fun in all of this, of course, and regulatory tape.
Compliance.
But it's a very interesting time, especially as people are looking at like, how do, to Hannah's point, how am I able to like pay down my mortgage by maybe getting a little creative? I think consumers are starting to get creative on their own already. And so how do you support that? And I think there's just really, we're at a very interesting moment, I think, in time for payments. So yeah, I agree. It's like, I once wrote an article for Barclays report where I was talking about how, you know, a lot of fintech that you see is like the rebranding of something that existed. Like everyone uses Zelle and Venmo. It's ACH. It's been around forever, right? Like there's BNPL is a lot of structured loans. Sometimes it's running on prepaid, et cetera. So I think there's just this opportunity for gift cards to really kind of have that moment right now, which is exciting.
Mhm. I think too, what this tells us from an incentive perspective is it's really important to think about the incentives we're providing and how they meet such a diverse group of needs, right? When we start to talk about self-use, each of ourselves is different, right? And what's super important to one is different to the other. I know, like I saw Pam on the phone and some other folks, especially folks that are in the healthy benefits or some of these areas. They beat us to the punch on the fact that what's healthy to one person is healthy to is different. There's mental health and physical health and different kind of career health. And if we know that folks are really starting to use these incentives and benefits in really creative and important ways, how do we make sure that we're coming to them with incentives they can use, right? How do you make sure that if you could have this great program, and if it fails to really provide what these folks need and the tools that they want to use, then you haven't really incentivized, have you? Right? We've all gotten the bad gift from an employer or a bad rebate product from a producer and thought, yeah, that did not incentivize me at all, right? The best incentive is one that's meaningful to the recipient, to the point of B2B to C, right? At the end, there's somebody who received this, and what did that mean to them?
Yeah, and just adding to that with some of the things that Hannah showed, is how much from the retailer, the start of the chain in this, the brand, the retailer, need to get on board with this. That there has, particularly if I think of the UK market, there in the employee benefits, there have been still a number of brands which will not allow discounting to the end consumer. You cannot buy a gift card within your employee program at a discount. But that's kind of that's the key, isn't it? That's the part. If you're going to go through buying a gift card, you want some benefit from doing so. Otherwise, you'll just pay with Apple Pay or get your debit card out. So there are some brands that have found a middle ground on that. So they kind of have two versions of their product, one which is okay for reward and one which can be used in employee benefits, that kind of thing. That's how they've solved it logistically. That causes a few issues for them to kind of police and monitor that, without a doubt. But I just think that's an interesting dynamic. The reluctance has typically come from, say, the supermarket type chains and things, because there's so little margin for them to play with. They really don't want to be giving it away in the kind of volumes that they would see. But then there is the flip side of that. It's a competitive space. If you want to keep those customers loyal to you, and they can go and shop at a different supermarket up the road and get access to discount of some sort, because even 2 and 3% makes a big difference in people's cost of living. Yes. So I think that's another angle in terms of this whole dynamic around self-use and how the brands themselves need to be on board with it.
Absolutely. Thanks, Christine. All right, before we move on to Anne and talking about multi-brand, any other questions around self-use or thoughts, comments? All right, Anne, you're up.
All right. Well, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Anne Jetter. I am with SB Collective, which was recently, almost 6 months ago, acquired by eGifter. And so we are proud to have an eGifter Choice card, which is one of the things that we'll be talking about right now. But as we've referenced quite a bit, I'm the president of IGCC. Glad to have Eric on board with us, and a lot of the faces here that are also members of that. So we appreciate that. One of the things that we were able to do this past year is to partner with the Javelin Research Group, and they performed we commissioned them to do an amazing study revealing specifically on B2B gift card and redemptions. Their projections were that there is growth in the industry from 44 billion to 60 over 60 billion by the year for 2027. This has been the common thread of questioning. Does that include open loop? Does it not include open loop? So that does include open loop, which really opens the gamut to a lot of different things. So incentives make up 15 to 20% of that market in the US. So choice cards, boiling that down further, choice cards make up 22% of that reward catalog. Last year it was 14%. So a choice card has doubled in growth in 1 year in the redemption choices. So giving you a lot of the Javelin study that is available to the members of IGCC, but it really puts things in perspective as to how much growth there is out there and why people are using the growth or the charity, or, oh my gosh, the gift card choice cards. I was just on charity choice cards. Sorry. So the choice cards are and the multi-brand cards are extremely important to keep them in your portfolio. As we know, these are some tips or the top reasons why people give choice cards. So obviously instant gratification and timeliness. So if you have a global workforce, which several of you do, I see on this call, it delivers a higher impact when presented immediately. So we know that there are stats in the engagement and employee recognition that says, if I did something well, it has a lot better impact if I get it right away and say, great job, versus a week ago, do you remember what it was? Then personalization and choice. It's perceived as more thoughtful and lets the recipient choose what they want. So kind of piggybacking on what we were just talking about, where it works for you and how do you creatively turn those funds into how it's going to be beneficial to you. And I think everyone's getting very savvy from a consumer perspective on how can I convert this into something that's going to give me a little bit better discount, or can I piggyback that onto a promotion that's going to give me a little bit, get more out of that reward. You can also split some of these into several denominations. So you can spend a $50 gift card, 25 at one place on maybe a necessity, and maybe allows me to splurge on something with take $25 off of a more expensive item that I wouldn't normally do. Then the flexibility and the global reach. It reduces delivery costs and provides a seamless experience. So back to the timeliness and getting it into people's hands very quickly, and it lets them, accept that reward and gets to use it immediately. Then this whole thing is all about improving engagement and employee morale. So when employees feel appreciated, they're more engaged. So that's kind of the goal of this. And then along with increased engagement is retention. So you want to keep your employees and keep it timely. And it is crucial for retaining knowledge and reducing the hiring costs in the turnover. And then finally, it reduces administrative costs and it lowers risk. Sitting or having a stash of gift cards in a drawer is very risky, or walking out of the grocery store, we know, with thousands of dollars in gift cards and somebody follows you to the car isn't always the safest way to, they take it all back to the office. And quite honestly, with so many people working remotely, it's probably less of a risk and a concern anymore. So go to the next slide, please. And this is kind of where it brings it all home. So giving someone a gift that they want opens the door to all of the loyalty possibilities and visiting and how they use that gift card. They visit 33% visit the store more often. And the stats here, these are all from the Javelin study that we commissioned in the fall. And then 28% use the gift card in multiple shopping trips, which it also, if you keep it in your mobile wallet and store it, you can have it and use it for future and have it just kind of in your back pocket. There's a lot of new up and coming mobile applications that are addressing that and stretching your dollars. Back to the buying something more expensive than they normally would. So again, if you get a large reward and you really wanted that jacket or laptop or something like that, knowing that you did a good job and your employee performance contributed to helping you get that, you're going to remember that. And that means a lot. And 27%, it allows you to try a new brand or a product or service that you may not have normally wanted to select. So it kind of opens the door to having some experimentation with some new brands. And then to try a new store or retailer, 25% of the market goes into and tries a new store or a retailer, which I think we're seeing a lot of that evolution of, some of us our kids aren't going to be carrying a Southwest Rewards card around anymore. They're going to be and banking our points, like all the moms and dads that, get a free trip, that type of thing. Loyalty is evolving. And so some of the new brands that are coming to market, this is the way for them to get into that and to introduce that. And then also to bring up the next gen for them to start getting hooked onto the loyalty and bringing that all full cycle. So I think that is it.
Awesome.
Went through it quick.
Yeah, good. So I'll bring it home real quick. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on digital physical. I think I'd bore you guys. I think you all know that that there are trends. I think just the call out here that everyone keeps, the reason it keeps showing up in all the different reports is that gap is starting to narrow right. And I will tell you, it's funny as we were having a chat about this. If for those of you that are long in the tooth, like me and some other folks, right? About 10 years ago, if you went to a conference and you didn't talk mobile, you just weren't cool and hip, and you didn't get to sit at the cool and hip kids table because that was kind of the buzzword of the moment, right? And so, AI is one of the ones right now. There's always a buzzword, but you have to be talking about digital in your program, right? Nobody's out there saying that physical is the way to go. However, physical still beats digital in every study that we've looked at. The gap is narrowing. It used to be a lot more, but everybody wants to go, oh, digital is the way of the future, and we're digital only, and digital, and that's great, and we're absolutely heading there. The trajectory for digital is there, but physical cards are still, or physical incentives, not just physical cards, but physical incentives are still important to people. People like the touch, they like the feel. I'll tell you, when I first went to Walmart in 2010 to work on financial services, one of the categories they gave me to work on was check cashing. And everybody's like, oh, paper checks are dying. Well, the first article about paper checks dying was written in 1987 that I could go back and find. And today, hundreds of millions of dollars are still cashed every week in paper checks. So there's always this base amount of folks who like what they like. And I think in incentives, we're always going to have a base amount of folks that like the physical products. They like a hat, they like a Yeti tumbler, and they like physical gift cards. And so you've got to have your feet in both worlds, I think, is the trend that we've got to do. So we've got to make sure that we're in sync to that digital trend, that, I do know gift card programs that still don't have a good digital gifting exchange. I think they're missing the boat. I think they're behind if you don't have a digital experience at this point, but you can't do that at the expense of, we're going to trash physical and go. So I think that's one of the things that the research is showing us. The other thing that surprisingly has come out of a number of research topics lately is that younger generations are still excited about physical gift cards. They love experiences, and we know that, right? We know that they love to travel and they love to do things and they love to bungee jump and skydive and all the things. They're very experiential, right? That comes down to all the way down to the way they work with gift cards and incentives. They want to hand it. They love to take a gift card and put it inside of a greeting card and then get a bottle of champagne and give you an experience versus just handing you a gift. And so, and there are a lot of employers, and when we think about in the incentive space, same way. If I just send you a digital gift card and go Merry Christmas, it feels very impersonal. If I send it out and I've done something with it, it's there. So there's still a place for physical, but physical and digital have to come together in the experience.
Some of the comments here were very from Hannah, interesting that the digital is bigger share in the UK than physical.
Yeah, and I think we
Yes.
do this like every time I join you guys at IMA or at RGCA. It's always interesting to see that there's definitely the UK is in a slightly different place than the States, where there's this real, maybe it's the huge amount of B2B sales, maybe it's the employee benefits platforms, but in our sales data, we definitely see more than 50% of the sales are in digital.
Well, you also beat us in mobile usage as well. And I think one of the things that we have to get right in order to make that turn in the US, especially, is we've got to get the full experience correct. Back to what Eric said, we're amazing in the US at delivering digital payments. But when it comes to a card and turning around and using it, not so much so. How many of us have been told, okay, here's this thing, but in order to use it, you've got to download our app and put it in your wallet. And then when you get to the store, dear God, help you, can they even accept that off of your phone? Right? You're sitting there flashing your phone all over the place and beeping it with a scanner, and nobody can figure out how to use your gift card that's in your phone. So what I think the UK has done, you've made it more elegant all the way through the customer journey, right? Which is an important lesson for us all. Just because you can deliver it doesn't mean it can be redeemed. And if they can't redeem it, they don't want it, right? If you can't spend the money, why have it, right?
Takes me back to when the first digital gift card came out. It was basically sent to you digitally via email, but you still had to print it out on a piece of paper and take it in school and spend it. I mean, you know.
And some
Good old
people are still
days.
doing that, Jackie, right?
Yeah,
It's
this is
Yeah.
true. Very
yeah.
true, Eric. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, and then the printer smudges it, so it won't actually read the barcode. And yes, so.
Yes. Okay, so we've talked. So we started at tech, and we said tech kind of will force us down certain paths. AI is going to change the way people shop, the way people interact with us. With that, not just the tech driving us, but how people want to use their incentives. So the self-use portion of that, they want different choice. So how do we understand how multi-brand cards fit into that? And then of course, keeping an eye on digital and physical. So that was the 4 use cases that our crack investigative team came up with here. But what are we missing? What are the other big trends and incentives? And here's the highly interactive part of that, and either shout them out or put them in chat. What did we not cover? And don't worry, just because you raise your hand doesn't mean you have to do the next session. That would be awesome. Anything?
I've got one comment just to go back on the choice cards when Anne was talking. Here's a trend that I'm seeing, and I don't know if anyone else is. The choice cards are now serving as an incentive replacement in some of the employee loyalty B2B programs for the Amazon card. And whether that's the commercials or some of the things like from the reseller tracking client IDs that Amazon's requiring now down to its downstream distributors, can be a wonderful card. We all love Amazon, but from a distribution standpoint, and then because of the commercials on the discount, some of our clients, and I'm seeing this not just here at Neocurrency, but others, they're like, you know what, we're going to remove the Amazon card. We're going to drop in a choice card, because if the end consumer can pick from 100 brands, it's kind of like Amazon, and let them pick Nike and buy Nike shoes directly from Nike instead of buying Nike from Amazon. And we're seeing some clients love that option. It's like, kill Amazon. I mean, don't get me wrong. If anyone's from Amazon, I love Amazon. I'm a loyal shopper. I need to give all of my, but from a B2B incentive distribution point, I think some of us could probably agree it can be sometimes a problematic product. And these choice cards are now serving as a new way to give an Amazon-like experience to the end consumer, because they can pick
some research around too much choice, right? There's a point at which when you give people, hundreds and thousands of choices, which sounds amazing, that they tend to choose the top 5 or 6 things anyway. And so at some point you can overwhelm people and say, here, you can use this for anything on the planet, versus here, you can use it. Here's 10 great ideas, and there they are, right?
One thing I'll add is the 2026 IRF Outlook study. Their research indicated that gift cards were the #1 thing in their employee incentives, and the #1 category was dining for gift cards, and it surpassed online large retailers to be named, right? So dining the dining category and the dining gift card was the #1 gift card in all of their surveys.
Interesting.
Which I think coming out of COVID, putting into the whole experiential situation, I think there's a lot to be said for that. You have DoorDash and all kinds of reasons to kind of contribute to that, but I thought that was a very, very interesting stat.
Yeah, and I think that's where the choice, but categorized choice, comes into it a lot, isn't it? Because that gives that you're not tying into a single brand, you're also not giving the hundreds of brands, but actually for certain use cases having a category, particularly then conversations with the clients where, you know, it might be an insurance company or something, you can narrow it down to home related choice-based categories or something that they feel is a connection to whatever they are trying to incentivize, but is actually still giving the end recipient a bit of control. They feel as if they're in control, they're making the choice on a brand that they actually value and want to use. So I think there's that kind of compromise hybrid kind of scenario as well, sits in that space.
If we all want to put our forecasting glasses on, and this is always fun when you look in the crystal ball. So, and this hits on a couple of things. It hits on self-use. It hits on the brand's decision on how best to manage their branded currency. But if you look at mobile wallet usage or adoption, so here's some numbers. So here's some of the things I didn't get to in my 64% of all people have used their Google Pay or Apple Pay mobile wallet to make a purchase, tap and pay, something like on the payments end. That dropped from 64% down to 25% in terms of using your mobile device in conjunction with the gift card. And a big part of that, though, is because not all brands have enabled add to wallet functionality on their digital template or their form factor yet. So if there's a block there for a consumer, Marina, you were talking about this, showing up at point of sale with some form factor that the merchant didn't authorize to do tap and pay from a mobile wallet, you're then kind of dealing with, you know, the digital distribution of a barcode or a QR code, or sometimes the 16-digit PIN and code, whatever. However, the interesting thing is, for going back to the crystal ball, the number jumps, you guys, to 84% of Gen Z. So my daughter's generation have used mobile wallet tap and pay. So if we're putting our crystal ball, and if you're a brand or you work with brands and they haven't added that add to wallet functionality yet for their gift card template, it's like, let's jump on that. SVS actually talked about that at that SVS exchange last week. They're like, I think it's like 50% or less of brands have actually just gotten around to putting that as a priority. So,
wow.
Yeah.
All right. And with that, last chance, if you want to throw in a fun idea for the group to chew on for future reference, we're going to come right down to the end here. Last call. Awesome. Well, listen, thank you to my co-panelists. It was not hard to rope them in. They're amazing. They love to talk about this kind of stuff. If you ever see us at a conference, grab a glass of wine with us and we'll chew your ear off. I know, but appreciate you guys, Eric, Ann, and Hannah, for joining me in this. Appreciate everybody for being in. Please submit ideas for future conference. This is the kind of stuff we like to do. Is somebody said, let's talk about what's trending. And we said, sure, we'll do that. So if you've got a great idea for when to have on a future conference, let's do that. Let us know. And with that, appreciate everybody. Have a lovely afternoon or morning, as it were.
And thank you, Eric, for posting those links. Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.